Good evening again for the last 10 years, I've been presenting my budget to this association. And it's because I came up from this association. I was a town councilman before I was a supervisor. So like all my colleagues in the room, we're all kind of in the same boat together. And my friends in the legislature, I appreciate them being here tonight too. We have a very good relationship. And I want to reiterate what was said before. Mike Sweeten, we're going to really miss. I don't think you're going to go far away because I think you have such good talent and so much more to contribute still. So you might take a different role than being a Warwick supervisor. But I think we all appreciate what you've done for us, Michael. So thank you. So I always like to give highlights in the beginning and the takeaways at the end. So like at the end of the day, what did this guy say? Number one, we have the lowest tax rate since the 60s. Number two, we're under the tax cap. All the supervisors and mayors in the room know what I'm talking about. The tax levy is going to stay the same as last year. There's no unassigned fund balance to balance the budget. So what does that mean? We used to use money that we had in our rainy day fund just to get next year's budget balanced. We don't do that anymore. And our budget is $923 million. So $923 million for 2024. Where does the money come from? So, unlike towns, villages, and cities, and some other communities across the state and the country that balance predominantly their operational cost on property taxes, we're lucky in Orange County that we're doing so well. Lou Heimbach, the county executive from the 80s, tells me how he had like the first sales tax here. So 43%, our biggest chunk of revenue to keep the trains rolling, so to say, comes from sales tax. So that's why we're going to get into economic development later on. The second one is other revenue. Then you got property tax is the third. So that's the way you want to do this because sales tax is generated from everybody that comes in here, not just the people that live here. But when you talk about like the Woodbury Commons and the Legolands, most of the people that go to those places are not from Orange County. And if they're helping us pay our bills rather than sacking every family by their property tax, that's the better way to do it, right? Rather than hit these families and businesses. So where does the money go to? The biggest chunk goes towards human services, which is like our social services, Office of the Aging, Veterans Affairs. Then the next biggest chunk goes to health services and also Valley View, our nursing home. And then you can also roll into the 15% goes into general government support, which is like OGS, IT, the budget office. And then it goes into public safety, and then goes and tiers off from there. Cutting the property tax rate. So the tax rate, when I came here in 2014, and a lot of the legislators, the tax rate was 3.8%, and now we're looking at 2.75 was last year, 745, and now the one that I'm proposing for this year's 2.34. Now the reason why we do this, thank you. Now, I said this, and a couple of my county legislative colleagues said, don't bring this up. We could go lower if we want to. The reason why we don't go lower is we have to be cautious. And we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about unfunded mandates real quick. And this is the same pressures that the towns, villages, and cities in Orange County and across the state have as well. So the county tax rate will now, it'll be dropped. This is the 8th consecutive year that we're dropping the tax rate. This literally gives real relief to every household and every business in Orange County. A lot of people talk about that. You hear about it all the time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut that. It doesn't happen. Property tax rate's the lowest since the 60s. We think it's actually, it could go even further back, but we just don't have records like that. Kelly Eskew wasn't there back then. So this is as far as we can go. So some of the things that indicate or help do this is you realize what the full value is. So the full value is, how is Orange County doing? Is our value going up or down? Is the county healthy? Are people's property values going up or down? Obviously, we're growing and they're going up, and our tax rate is continuing to go down over the last 8 years. So why keep a fund balance? Every one of you has the same, this is whether it's your household or your business, you keep that rainy day fund, right? It gives you financial stability, gives you some strength with cash flow management. Also, with the financial rating, just like you have with your credit cards or your personal credit or your business's credit, it helps to have some extra money if something happens bad or a negative trend happens, and they know that you can recover. Also helps with long-term planning, especially if you have to borrow or do a big project, capital project. And then the last, which is the most difficult ones that we have, are unfunded mandates that come down predominantly from the state government. Just to talk about the state mandates, so I said that earlier before that property tax was the third largest source of how we balance our budget in Orange County. We have $124,000 comes, look at this, just the first couple mandates that come from the state. Youth detention, early intervention. Chris Bork's going to faint from hearing all this. Indigent defense, probation, public assistance, safety net, child welfare. Then you go down and it goes through all sorts of other stuff, universal pre-K, which is also very controversial. Good programs, important programs, but run predominantly by the state, and we have to pay the bill. And we have very little influence on how they are managed and implemented. Then the final one is Medicaid. We're going to hit that in a second. So New York State Medicaid is the highest cost in the country. And these numbers are going to be staggering to you. $72 million on Orange County taxpayers. So when I talk about unfunded mandates, last year New York State, we're going to get into their problems in a little bit because it impacts everybody. New York State says, you know what? Oh my God, we don't have enough money to pay for Medicaid. Every county is going to pay a bigger chunk now, just out of the blue. We're not going to give you a chance to decide when you're going to pay. So let's just give Orange County, we're going to hit you with another $10 million. You're going to pay for Medicaid, which we predominantly don't even run. New York State, just to give you examples, we are ranked #1 per capita in Medicaid spending, $3,700, as opposed to the national average, $2,100. New York State spent more than Texas and Florida combined in Medicaid. That's how much we spend here. Our spending has almost doubled in the last 5 years in New York State. That is not a good, responsible trend. 40% of New York's total population is covered by Medicaid. So these are some of the crazy things that we have to deal with that are mandated by Albany. Uncontrolled rising costs. These are problems that anybody in this room, whether you're a town councilman, a city councilman, mayor, or supervisor, or county legislator, are having to deal with right now. Employee retirement system increase is 19% plus for next year. You have to budget this. Health insurance is projected to go up another 10% for your employees. Retiree hospital costs up 9%. Then we have other programs like 18B, and then of course I talked about Medicaid. They're withholding that $10 million, so you don't even get it as part of the sharing. State fiscal outlook. So about a month and a half ago, I was the vice president, I mentioned this, of the Association of County Executives, and we had a call with the new state budget director. And the New York State budget director said, I said, look, I'm looking at what Tom DiNapoli is saying, the comptroller. We have a $36+ billion shortage in New York State. And I remember when Cuomo was governor, I just came back from Iraq. I met right across from his budget director with all the other county executives. And the budget director said, look, man, we got a $9 billion deficit. Now they're projecting $36 billion over the next 3 years. So what did the state do? Did you guys read it in the newspaper last weekend? They've started putting out a freeze across New York State spending, all their department heads. We've been through this before. You guys remember this 10 years ago. No more spending. No vouchers are going to get approved, even if it's budgeted. Well, that's where New York State's looking at right now. Significant economic and fiscal risks can also make this work, right? We're talking about inflation right now. We're talking about a government shutdown, all sorts of stuff. There was threats last year about a recession, whether it's happening or not. Then you have other stuff. The state, I told you, has a budget gap. Their spending is up and their revenue is obviously down. They don't balance their books. Medicaid enrollment is at an all-time high. The end of pandemic aid has stopped, right? All that stuff, the ARPA money that people were spending money on and the money that was going to governments as well has stopped coming in. Mass exodus of residents, the people that are actually providing are leaving the state. They're being taxed out here, so they're voting with their feet. You have a rise still in crime that we're dealing with. And we also have still a lot of regulation. Let's talk about, so what do we need to do? What do we do to get to overcome or at least meet these challenges? One of them is economic development. So Our sales tax, I'll give you, just so you guys see where the county's going, because we share this. Every town, village, and city shares sales tax with the county and the state of New York as well. So in 2014, the part that we got was $263 million. Now we're projected to have $393 million. This is real money. Some of you guys that have been around the block a while, like the last couple of years, are used to getting that extra check. Remember calling some of the cities or some of the towns, hey, you're going to get an extra check. Or some of the cities and towns call me and say, oh my God, I'm having a bad year. My budget doesn't balance. Are we getting extra sales tax money? That happened a couple times, which is a good thing to have. So the top 5 contributors of sales tax in Orange County, number 1 is clothing. Number 2 is automobile sales. Number 3 is restaurants and eateries like this beautiful establishment. Number 4 is electronic shopping. A lot of you that are buying stuff online from Amazon and Walmart and all these other places. And then gas stations are number 5. There's a whole list of them. The reason why I bring this up is the number 1 contributor for sales tax for almost all the counties, except for Orange County, including the 5 boroughs, is automobile sales. Orange County's number 1 is clothing. Obviously, you got Woodbury Commons, but it's also your local Main Street, your mom and pop. Anybody that's selling that is contributing and making a difference here. Hotel occupancy tax, the Steve Gross tax, as he likes to call it. Or I think, was it Rampy or Eddie? Eddie Diana said we need to find a new way to tax people, or we need to get a new revenue from, so what are we doing? So you guys came up with the concept of the hotel motel tax. And it started out in 2014. It was $3.1 million. We're looking at right now, budgeted for next year, $6.6 million. And we're going to get into why we think that. And by the way, we used a big chunk of this money to reinvest in tourism. We're going to get into that later on. So right now, for 2024, we're looking at 4 new hotels for Orange County. The year after that, we're looking at 19 new hotels. Many of you, and then the year after that is 3 right now that we know of. There might be more that are going to be on the in the planning phases. This is going to be over 2,600 new rooms. So these are all people that are going to not only contribute to your local economy. Many of the local towns have already adopted laws for their local hotel motel tax, but they're also spending sales tax and visiting some of your eateries and other attractions in your community. So explosive growth in tourism. When I came back from my mobilization from Europe last year, one of the things I proposed at this very place was to talk about a 4 seasons campaign for tourism. So do one for spring, do one for fall, do one for summer, and so on and so forth. So we tried it, and just comparing it to the website traffic from a couple of years ago, 89%. From looking at over 1.1 billion of visitor spending, the highest ever increase, 23% over the year prior to that. Then you look at the Instagram followers. All this stuff matters to you. Whether you're younger or older or believe in the stuff or not, it all matters. Our spring 2023 website traffic increased by 46%. Why do I bring this up to you? Last week we had an incredible economic development summit. We're going to be releasing some video clips of that. One of the comments that the main speaker said is that when most counties are pulling back investing in tourism and attracting and getting people to come to their community, they're pulling back on that money. We're actually reinvesting. We're putting that money there. So when people come to our hotels and they're spending money and they're saying, why do I pay this hotel tax? It's going to bring more of them back here to fill up those 4 hotels next year or the 19 hotels the year prior. New projects, Dinosaur Park going to Montgomery right now. It's going through the planning phase. It's going to complement our big places like Legoland, Woodbury Commons. It's set to open in 25. 1/6 of the visitors will be students. The total annual revenue they're looking at is $39 million. It'll be a lot smaller than Legoland, but it'll be a big impact for the county and that community. $1.6 million in sales tax is anticipated annually right off the bat. Got other companies like Tesla. I remember we did a call with them about a month and a half ago. I think Amanda was on the call, and Maureen, myself, Mike Torelli. And one of the questions we asked Tesla is, if you could have more space in Orange County, how much would you have? 5 million square feet right off the bat. And we would love to do manufacturing, distribution, all sorts of stuff in this state. The problem is, as environmentally friendly this state says they are, and I'm not trying to beat them up, but even my friend Jen Metzger, the county executive in Ulster County, she's a senator. I said, is this true? She goes, unfortunately, it's true. New York only allows 6 electric dealerships in the state because of the gas lobby. So if you and your wife or you are looking at buying an electric car and you have to drive 3 or 4 hours to get serviced, that's going to probably persuade you not to but maybe get one right now. So whereas opposed to, I think there's 6 in New York State, there's 16 or 18 in the state of Florida. I checked it myself. That's the difference here. So we can make certain changes in New York State and really turn the stuff around. Add more jobs, add more manufacturing. And by the way, this manufacturing isn't the stuff you've read about in the history books with the Ford assembly line. Most of the stuff is assembled. The parts are coming over, but they do create jobs. So it's, again, I think it's a great thing, 150 employees, and I think that it's something that we need to think about. Woodbury Common just announced, and again, I know I'm hitting on the big projects, but the mom and pop projects, that's why we do these 4 seasons campaigns, and we try to welcome people to our downtowns in their cities or towns and villages. But the Commons itself, 150,000+ square feet of retail space. They want to put a hotel so people can shop 2 days. We'll take that. New 5-level parking garage, which will give them the extra money to get the extra space for the square footage for retail space. They bring in about 12 million shoppers annually. We work very closely with them. Dave Mastrada, their general manager, is a resident of Goshen. He's part of our community. And they employ between 4,000 and 5,000 people a year. That's a lot of people in Orange County. A lot of people, all different types of level jobs there. So the construction is supposed to start by the end of next year. And again, half the shoppers are international or domestic tourists. Again, that just shows you that the people that are contributing to these taxes are from out of town, as opposed to hitting every family in this county and every business more than they need to already. So what's new in the budget? I just want to highlight a couple things. And again, I know a lot of people are waiting for like fireworks, and this is the budget address. This is as exciting and sexy as you can make a budget address. We're talking numbers and figures and projections. The state of the county is the one where we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. This is just talking about money. So, new thing, IT. One of the biggest vulnerabilities that every business and every county, every government, every city faces is being hacked, losing information, stolen, ransoms, all sorts of stuff. So, back in the day, we in a county government consolidated with purchasing, but purchasing and procurement is a big operation in itself. So we are now moving to create a separate office of IT. Right now we have the Office of Homeland Security checking where we might have vulnerabilities. Nobody is perfect, and it's always important to always do, like I said earlier when we talked about emergency management, hot washes. What went wrong? What went right? What can we do better? How can we improve things? Same thing with cyber. So we have that being done right now. We had a fire at the Otterway building at the Arboretum last year. That's being fixed right now. But in addition to that, I am proposing to the legislature a new pavilion. And I hate the word pavilion for this, because really what it is a real indoor catering type of facility. We have weddings there now, people bring in the circus tents. But when it was proposed to me, I think it was 100 and something tables. We are now going to have a 200 something table, it's basically event space. Pavilion is the word for it, but it's not going to look like your pavilion at the soccer field. This will be really beautiful. It's going to be themed after an Adirondack type of feel to it. And when you see some of the schematics for it, it's absolutely beautiful. And I think it's going to be something that we can use not only to rent out for people, but when we do our night ceremonies, like the 9/11 ceremony every year, and we have bad weather, we could do something inside, or when we want to host different types of events. You guys will be impressed when you see it. And obviously, we're in Port Jervis today. I know my friend Tom Faggione's excited about the reopening of the DMV office. Here's our great clerk and her newest deputy. And they're going to be bringing that operation back to Port Jervis. So That's a good thing as well. Let's talk about other stuff. Open space preservation. I think I was the only Republican on the Orange County Land Trust when they were starting out. And Lou Mills, the former county executive back in the late 70s, who our first county executive, was the guy that actually was the guy to help just organize and breathe life into it. But we've been able to preserve significant, thousands of acres, significant pieces of property. And there's one thing they're not making again, they're not making property. So our big thing is to conserve and protect vital properties. Many of you, towns and villages and even cities, one of the cities right now is being proposed, actually 2 of the 3 cities, for some major land preservation. We are looking to preserve, I have 15,000 acres in my mind, but I know it's 35,000 totally, in this side of the county alone. This is going to connect us to the Delaware, the Neversink. These are beautiful pieces of property that are at risk for either development or having other type of harm to be done with them. It's going to be beautiful, and I know I'm going a little bit in a different order. We're also thinking about connecting the rail trails, starting from here in Port Jervis, going all the way to Kingston, utilizing the rail trails that are existing in our brothers and sister counties like Ulster and Sullivan counties, and tying them into a whole network. I live on the Heritage Trail in Chester. It is a gem. There are hundreds of people using that every day, families, people exercising, people just getting outside. It's just a wonderful thing. The Warwick Bike and Pedestrian Trail was already approved. We're moving forward with that. The Scunnamunk Rail Trail, which is going to take us from Chester all the way to Salisbury Mills, is already in operation too. We're taking steps. They take a little bit longer because they involve some federal monies, but it's happening. These are not things that are like, hey, maybe next year I'll come back to you and say they're not going to happen. These are going to actually happen, and they are going to transform this county in a great way. And I bring this up for one other reason. Micron is the biggest company in the history of this country to do an investment, the largest investment ever. This is happening up in Syracuse. This is that new chip company everybody's trying to pull their chip manufacturers out of Taiwan. This will be the biggest investment. The CEO of Micron said that the main reason why everybody was asking him to bring his company there. He said the number one reason why he went to Syracuse and went to Onondaga County was because the quality of life they offered to the employees. Parks, museums, aquariums, things like that. So open space, Legoland, your local town, village parks. I was talking to the Deer Park about the Harriet Space Farm Park that we're continuing to grow out there. They matter for your residents. They also matter about your stability and sustainability for the future. These are good things. Public safety, one of my babies, as you know. We started offering free CPR to all residents. We tried to focus on high school, offering any high school. Some of them have taken advantage of it, some of them haven't. We still offer that. So if you're a town, village, city, or if you're a church group or a synagogue or whatever, we will offer free CPR training and take it from a guy like me. I've seen it change and save people's lives. Then you go down the list, assisting with updating and modifying school emergency response plans. A lot of you ask me, like, when the heck did we start looking at reunification plans? Well, we've been working on them as we see what's going around the country. We don't want to be caught in a situation where we say, oh, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Conducting emergency disaster preparedness presentations. Last week I said we had one of the best communications for crisis communications come in, and sure enough, we had the fatal bus accident 2 days later. These are the type of things that we offer to our first responders, our schools, our team members. Active shooter training, we just did. Not only do we do it with fire and EMS to rope them in, it's not just something for law enforcement, we're roping in the school districts. Half the people that show up at our active shooter training classes are school teachers that are often left out. The administration knows what's going on, the law enforcement knows what's going on, but the people that are actually going to be implementing these plans, the school teachers, to make sure that your kids and my kids are safe, are often left out. We offer that to everybody. Vehicle barriers, unfortunately, another new thing that we had to do, but we used to have to park DPW, like public works trucks, at mass gatherings, parades, and so on and so forth. We bought vehicle barriers that we are actually working with our local municipalities. Some of you guys have already used them. Again, these are good, I think, good investments on behalf of the county. We're also emergency communication for first responders in schools. Most schools are old, and they do not have a lot of accessibility for communications. Your cell phones don't work. Go to your kids, your grandkids' events. Sometimes your cell phone doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't. The same is true for police radios. So the county, because we have a great legislature that works hand in hand with me, is investing in enhancements in your schools so you'll have those repeater systems, if you will. Some of them are even going to add it for cell phone service, which also can help first responders. These are just a small sampling of what we're doing with public safety right now. So, the other thing I think is important is the Orange County government is doing more with less. When I came in, we had 2,400 employees. Right now, we got just under 2,200. It's over 200 less employees. When do you see that? These are the good things that we're doing together in county government. So we're operating in an efficient manner. In my opinion, we're doing a lot better than I think we've ever done. We're meeting and trying to deal with these mandates that are coming on from all different sides. We're expanding our county services, and we're doing this, again, with less personnel. I'll end on this note. It is an honor to be the county executive here. It's literally, I have fun doing this job. When there's crisis and seeing the men and women that work for this county step up and do the incredible work they do, every department we have does incredible work. And I am super proud, and I know the legislature is, of our department heads, of our staff, our over 2,000 employees on a regular basis that are doing great stuff. Whether they work in DMV, whether they work in DPW, whether they're sheriff's deputies, whether they're investigators, whether they're working for Child Protective Services, every one of them is really, in my opinion, does a great job for the county. So with that, I'm going to stop. Hold on, I think I have 2 other slides. What do we know for the future, right? I talked about the unfunded mandates, possibility of the recession, the economic factors, inflation, which every family and every one of you are dealing with right now, feeling. Student loans, just an example, student loans now have to be repaid starting in October, which impacts 45 million people. That's a big deal, especially if you're just starting out and you thought you didn't have to do this. Then the last thing is the societal impacts. Rise in crime, substance abuse. It deals with the things that we're dealing with, fentanyl, right? Domestic violence and suicide. These hit home. And if you're part of emergency operations, you know this more than anything. These hit home today, last 24 hours. A lot of big things like this we're dealing with. So what do we know? We know that the property tax rate is the lowest in decades. Tourism is flourishing in our economy. People want to be here. Companies still want to be here. Real property tax value remains steady, which is good. It's an indicator that people say, all right, this is something we want to be a part of. Projects are still coming and being part of Orange County. The government is running efficiently and providing essential services, and our government is sound. Thank you.